Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind those healthcare executives out there that are from small and rural healthcare organizations that Capstone provides complimentary consultations. As you may know, we help small and rural healthcare organizations to be the provider and employer of choice to keep care local and margins strong. Go to capstoneleadership.net and you can fill out the contact form there or actually self-schedule a day and time that works for you. We'd love to partner with you in executing a winning strategy.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage.
Welcome to another episode of Culture Change RX. It is me, Sue Tetzlaff, the co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions and the host of Culture Change RX. And today is one of those episodes where I have a guest in the studio, and we always start by having our guests introduce themselves. So that's where we'll start. Hi, Theresa. Welcome. And go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Sue. Thanks for having me. I am the Chief Nursing Officer here at Grant Regional Health Center. We are in the southwest corner of Wisconsin. I have been Chief Nursing Officer here at Grant for about 2.5 years, but I've been in the role of Chief Nursing Officer for over 10 years at various rural health facilities. I have practiced in both level 1 trauma, level 2 trauma, and when I found rural health, I really found my home. I found healthcare that is very meaningful, and I am just really happy with rural health.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. And we're kind of kindred spirits in that way. I spent a lot of my executive career as a chief nursing officer in a rural community hospital too. So we are kindred in that way. The other thing that, I want to let the audience know before we get started today, Theresa, is that our company, Capstone Leadership Solutions, has known Grant Regional for many years now, more than 5 years. We were partnered with them at the early part of their transformation journey. And what that really means is they've been committed to excellence and greatness in providing care to their community. Like they've really been strategically committed to that. We were so privileged to be able to partner with them to do that. And that really means the commitment across the board to being a great organization, including nursing excellence. And so today we wanted to focus on the nursing bundle and nursing excellence in particular. But overall, the organization really has been 5-star quarter after quarter in patient satisfaction for many years, and also other results in quality and service. And employee experience. So I just wanted to kind of manage up Grant a little bit in that way before we talk about nursing excellence. And recently, I know that your team has been up to kind of a deep dive and a review and update in what we would call the nursing bundle practices. And so I thought we'd spend some time today chatting about that. And I know it's a big topic and it's been, a fair bit of work and effort and focus on your part and your leaders and your staff's part. But wherever you want to start with that, we'd love to hear about it.
Sure. Well, with the nursing bundle here at Grant Regional, as Sue alluded to, we've been partners with Capstone Leadership Solutions since 2018, so long before I arrived here in Grant. And our nursing leaders simply say that's just how we nurse around here, is with the nursing bundle. And the components of the nursing bundle, of course, include purposeful rounding, making sure our whiteboards are up to date, making sure that we provide individualized patient care, of course, a meaningful handoff report, and following up with our patients on discharge phone calls. Each of those components are definitely key to embracing the patient and making sure that you are touching the patient in all aspects of their care. I would say that it's been really embedded in the culture over a long period of time, such that it is just that's our expectation. But that being said, we had a couple of incidents last year that caused us to take a pause and look not only at the incidents themselves, but also to take a look at all of the structures that we have surrounding our patients to make sure that we are keeping our patients safe and we're making sure that we're holding the highest standard of care. And while we've always had the nursing bundle in place, it was an opportunity for us to really dig deeper and put some guardrails around what our expectations are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that clarity, like I mentioned, I was a nursing officer for a lot of years as well. And I was part of that effort in my organization for introducing a nursing bundle and, bringing it alive in the organization. And I recently sent out an email about the fact that my mom was recently in a patient in the hospital where I had helped them introduce the nursing bundle many years ago. And, 10 plus years, almost 15 years later, when she was a patient, I could see it in action in my mother's care. And what I do know is that takes effort ongoingly to keep these practices, even though they are best practices. And it gets to a point where you think, yeah, that's just how we do it around here. You still have to be intentional, or even these best practices can kind of slip away a little bit from you. And I love that you use the word guardrails. What do you mean by that? In my mind, I know what you mean by that, but I'm curious what that means in your organization as you look at using guardrails as part of the way to make sure that these practices are really working to serve your patients.
Well, we like to honor our professionals' licensure. We like to honor their capabilities, their clinical judgment, and we like to honor their ability to make decisions. But that being said, there is a wide variety of how people make decisions. And so we felt that we needed to take a look at the variety of decisions that were being made and to start maybe tightening down what we define clinical practice here at Grant to be. So an example of that would be, yes, we round on our patients hourly during the day on the medical unit. We round on our patients every 2 hours in the nighttime, provided that they're not sleeping. Mm-hmm. And we also have different parameters for other areas. So nursing is across the house. So each department has defined it. And that's just a timeline. Mm-hmm. Not digging deep into the content of that rounding and making sure that you have the connection with the patient and that you have structure or guardrails around what the expectations are. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a task. It has to be meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brene Brown's famous quote, "Clear is kind," really comes to mind when you say that, because, when we have clarity around what the guardrails are, what the expectations are, that it's easier to be successful. It's really easy to train, support, coach, set up systems and training and support and onboarding and orientation when it's so clear. Right.
For some of our professionals, nurses, what they thought was doing well, they had opportunity for improvement. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, some were going way above and beyond and had no idea that others were not doing the same activities that they were doing. So again, providing some clarity around what those expectations are was really a meaningful activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What you're really speaking to is variation in, practice. And like you say, professionals, we work autonomously and independently within our licensure, but standard practice, as we know, decreasing that variation is how we get to high reliability and zero defect. Yeah. So really being clear about the protocol, the guidelines. And what I also heard a little bit of there is this idea of raising the bar, is that, maybe when we started, this is what we thought the practice was and could be and whatever. But when you've been using it for a long time, some of those professionals, like you say, that are doing it above and beyond, they've discovered or innovated maybe better practices that now we need to incorporate and really raise the bar and say that this is the new, better way. and we up-level our practice and up-level results.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've actually done this with each of the components. So even the whiteboard, we know that the whiteboard will be completed, and it's got components that are predefined on the whiteboard. And typically they're completed, and we audit those to make sure that they're completed. But we discovered opportunity for better communication around falls components, and also including interdisciplinary partners to be able to add to those whiteboards so that there was better communication. That communication occurs in the chart. And now it's including the patient, and it's right there on the wall so that everybody's clear.
Yeah, yeah. It's such an effective communication tool. It seems almost too simple to be that powerful. But again, when my mom was a patient, I was just reminded again about what that meant to her, and also me as her daughter that was, coming in and spending time and participating in her care and advocating for her. So I suspect that you as a chief nursing officer didn't take this all on yourself and do it in your office all by yourself and hide out and do this. So can you talk a little bit about the process of, this is a big lift of nursing, validation and update and improvement. So who was involved and what process did you use to make this update?
Well, because what initiated our deep dive was a few safety incidents that had occurred. We started with this smaller group, but then we quickly realized that we needed to engage our team. And we started with Team Patient Ascenders, which is the name of two of our groups that have merged. So we originally had two different teams, the Ascenders, which was very nursing focused, and Patient Elevation. We've merged those teams together, so we have Patient Ascenders now. And that group looks at all things patient satisfaction and nursing combined, because they really do belong together. So we engaged that team, but again, those are representatives of the whole. And so we then also brought in the nurse leaders who cascaded down to each of their teams to gather feedback and information about what was realistic and what was not realistic in our expectations. And then cascaded back up again, and then reinitiated the conversation back with patient ascenders to really start looking at our policies, making changes to the policies, and then back down and back up again.
Yeah. So a real amount of interplay between leadership and staff together. There's so many examples. Theresa, you've probably seen it in your career as well, is that, and in particular, our company, we have an example that was kind of an extreme example of this, where hospital, which was a larger hospital, which is usually not our scope of work, but they asked us to help them because they had tried to implement one of the nursing bundle elements, which was hourly rounding. They tried it 3 different times over several years, and they just kept failing at the implementation. And it wasn't that they didn't know the what, why, and how of hourly rounding. It really wasn't anything to do with that. It was who was involved in the process and what process they used for the change. And they had no frontline staff involved at all. It was all being done by leadership 3 times in a row, and all 3 times it failed. And then when they handed it to a team like your patient ascenders, which was really, had a big component of staff level involvement and engagement in the change, and what are we going to do and how are we going to educate our staff on it, etc. The very next time they implemented it with that team as the champions of it, it was wildly successful, and it really fast. It happened so fast.
In the seat champions that really sell it to the peers.
Yeah.
Just a few nurses who really embrace each of the components. They will encourage it, they will model the behaviors, and they will make sure that the others see the advantages.
Yeah, absolutely. I would suspect that similar was true in my experience, is that you really do start to see, even beyond the patient ascenders and those that are formally engaged in leading the change or the update, that you find that you have some early adopters or shining stars in each department that are almost like super users, like we would use for IT or EHRs or something, that there's really people that they take to this like water and they become kind of the support for their peers to help them succeed with these practices. Are you noticing that? And that's probably well established, maybe given how long your organization has been committed to this.
Well, definitely, I truly believe in those that are the early adopters, and they really are the champions. And we definitely had several folks engaged in developing the changes. One thing that I've tried that I have been successful with is the naysayers, in grabbing a naysayer and getting them engaged into the committee that's doing the work early, because they will help us identify barriers and they will help us actually find solutions to overcome those barriers, because then they're part of that solution set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. At my hospital, one of the hardest parts of the nursing bundle for us to implement was bedside shift report. When we were going from having a report at the nurse's station or in the nurse's break room or whatever, and actually bringing it to the bedside, that was a hard transition. It was one of the hardest efforts that we had to make a change with one element of the nursing bundle. And I was really surprised that when we put the team together for that, it was our newest nurses that were all in and wanting to lead the change. And they really became the champion as our newest nurses. And so sometimes it surprises you. But one of the things they did instinctively, it reminds me of what you said about the naysayers, is they went right out and they started asking all, out in the units, what don't you like about this? What do you think is wrong about this? Why shouldn't we do this? Like, what do you think the problems will be with this? And they just collected. They didn't go out there trying to sell it. They went out there trying to collect all of the negative opinions about it. And then they used that to design their training, their education, how they set everything up. So I agree with you that you got to have champions, but you also have to really get at, hearing what the objections might be to be able to be successful.
Absolutely. That makes me think about a recent change. Probably about a month ago, we had discovered that there were some grumblings from the nursing team about bedside shift report. Our bedside shift report takes about 45 minutes to get through all of the patients, and we've got great engagement with physical therapy, occupational therapy, pharmacy, nursing. We have case management and social worker are all present with the patient, asking the patient questions when it's appropriate for that particular patient. And when we started hearing some of these grumblings, we did some digging into what was going on. And what we learned was that the order of which the report outs came typically ended with the nurse. And the nurse was feeling, and perception is reality.
Yeah.
A little less important in the care of the patient. And so we worked through it with the team. We made more of a cognizant effort on who was reporting when. And it really revitalized the whole process because we had never even thought about whether it was important for person A or person B to go first or second or what. So making that little change of the order of who talks when really re-engaged the nurses. It also even had an impact on the engagement of our patients as well.
Yeah, that's a great story and an example about how, as leaders, if we're sitting in a room thinking about making one of these best practices our standard and making that work across the board in our nursing units, like it's these little pieces that we're not going to be able to know these things. It is those that are actually doing it that are going to know these things. And that's why we don't get it right the first time. You have to introduce it. You have to do it for a while. And then these kind of things are going to come up. You can't predict what's going to come up when we're in the room planning these things for sure. I'm wondering where you are right now in the process. Like, are you done with it? Are you just still have some things to do? Like, I know we're never done with this work officially. We're always your team has been together for a long time, and they'll always have an action plan for improving nursing care and to some respects that will in some way touch the nursing bundle. But where are you at right now? And like, what are you in the thick of right at the moment in this part of the project?
Well, we like to say study adjust.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make an adjustment, you do really need to, hold and try your adjustment for a period of time and stay with it, audit, make sure that everybody's compliant, and then come back to the table and talk about, was that change successful? Do we need to make further changes? But if you make changes too quickly, then people get confused. They're not sure where we're at on the journey. They're not sure where we're at on what the expectations are. Mm-hmm. So I will say that a lot of the changes we made around the whiteboard were early this year, and those have really stuck. We really learned a lot about the variability in our falls mitigation implementation for what nurses were choosing and what other nurses were choosing. That was a big change for us. And then adjusting the whiteboard to be able to communicate everything that was being done. And we held on that for a period of time, and it really stuck. And we have found some really great benefits from that. The more recent change of the order in which folks report for bedside shift report, that's a relatively new change. Mm. And I really feel that it's an important change because we're looking at each discipline as participating into the patient's care. But our nurses really do hold that key component of that full circle in making sure that they're communicating with everyone. So I'm really pleased with this change, but we'll have to wait and stay the course for a while and then adjust in a little bit.
Yeah, spoken like a true process improvement advocate there. But what you're also speaking to when you talk about study adjust is data. And I know that especially early on when the teams formed, and you've had teams together since 2018 that have been focused on these very specific things, is that they do become pretty data savvy to know that is what they implemented actually creating measurable change. I love seeing that in nursing teams or any team, but I think nurses might have a bent towards that anyway. Like we love to see like a patient's vital signs improving and the data and the labs improving. So we're kind of conditioned to that anyway. So how data savvy is your team?
We are definitely, nurses in general are definitely outcome driven.
Yeah.
I do remember my statistics class, and I'm not good at creating and developing it. I know what I want to look at, but how we get there, that takes a little bit of an expert, and I will talk with my team, my quality teams on that. But once we have the data, yes, absolutely. If they're not seeing results, they're looking to try to make a change quickly. That's where it is important to kind of hold to make sure that you're not looking at an anomaly, that you're looking at real solid data that has been trended over time.
Yeah. And I think one of the challenges of that in small and rural healthcare organizations is, we're usually dealing with low volume, whether that's patient satisfaction, whether that's quality data and, patient volumes. And so, one piece of data moving, we could be chasing pretty low volume things, or our data could look skewed just with one or two things. But when we're going for high reliability, one is not none. So we're going for zero anyway. So,
right.
Yeah. As far as, when I was thinking about celebration, that just popped into my head was like, you mentioned before we started recording today that you actually had a celebration at your organization today, not related to nursing, but to IT in your department or in your organization. But I do know that your culture at Grant is that you love to celebrate and recognize and really focus on the positive changes. So I'm wondering if your team's thought yet about, is there a certain milestone that you want to celebrate? Is there a certain target you're trying to reach to celebrate, or have you been celebrating along the way?
Well, we've definitely been celebrating along the way. We set a lot of goals, and when we meet those goals, we definitely celebrate, and usually with food. I will say that we've had a lot of run on ice cream lately. It's summer, so I can see that the ice cream is popular. In the spring, it was nachos for nacho average team.
Oh yeah. Aren't teams creative when they come up with this stuff too? It was like, I could never think of that. Yeah.
One thing that I do want to revisit, one of the things that the patient ascenders team did last year was, in order to focus on the nursing bundle, and again, this was a little bit before some of the changes that we had made, but we understand the need to reiterate the importance of each of the components, including the why. And so we did a project where Tish Wayne, she's our manager of OB, she developed a nursing bundle focus where each month she would develop a flyer that talked about one component of the nursing bundle, but it also talked about the why it was important. So, for example, with purposeful rounding, we know what it is. So it had a few of the components of it, but it was really more about why is purposeful rounding important. And it's about connection. It's about making sure your patient has what they need, identifying early interventions, making sure that the patient isn't primed to fall because they don't have their belongings, making sure that you're ahead of the game and not catching up later. So really proactive management of your patient by really being in there and connecting with your patient. And each month it was a different component. And each time she really focused on the why and really making it meaningful. And it was really well received. All of our teams had really positive feedback for Tish on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great tactic. It's good when you're starting something new to make sure people understand why we need to do something a new way. But it's also a great tactic to keep it going like years later, so people don't stop doing it just because they think it's not important to do anymore. Like we've graduated from it or we moved on for it. And, we used to have to do it, but we don't have, but there is a why to keep doing it. And that's where the data can come in, where you can show data that supports that it's making a difference. Stories can come in. Stories can be very powerful too. And usually we recommend you have to hit both, right? The head and the heart. You got to touch them with the why of the head. And because some of us are more motivated by one or the other, but usually both. But that's such a great tactic. And, that would be something not to just do once in a while, but to kind of keep alive or do a cycle of that every year as kind of a way to keep the nursing bundle alive and well into the future. You could recycle this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, put it on a rhythm, put it on a cadence of kind of preventive maintenance. But that's a great example. And I'm sure somebody's going to steal that idea and do something with that. Thanks for sharing that. Do you got any more of those? We have time for one more of those if you got a great practice or example of something that's worked.
One thing that came to mind when you were talking about patient stories is how many times we have had a patient speak up during bedside handoff to catch an error or correct a piece of information that they either misunderstood or we misunderstood to make sure that we all had our information correct. That engagement from the patient really helps them to truly feel that they are involved in their care and they know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I saw that in practice with my mom. It was just reminded me all over again why it was so important to introduce and adopt these practices in our community hospital. And I've been such an advocate for it ever since. And so glad to see the example at Grant of how your organization has embraced this and gotten positive benefit for your patients. And there's benefits for the nursing staff too. Again, it's way easier to do your work when it is so well structured and the expectations are so clear. There's no gray area, there's no question marks, there's just good evidence-based practice. Yeah. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, is there maybe anything else you wanted to make sure that you shared today?
I have worked in a number of different organizations, and I will say that at Grant, seeing these components truly embedded in, it's just how we nurse around here. Really, it just speaks to nursing practice isn't optional. We do get to choose how we practice, and we engage our teams in developing that practice. But really, seeing how embedded these practices are has been very rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good motivation right there. It really does change for the nurses, for the nurse managers, for the nurse executive. It's a game changer for and the benefactors, the patients, really, in the end, which is why we come to nursing and why we come to nursing leadership, right? Like
our patient satisfaction scores, our goal is greater than 90%, and we regularly are hitting close to 95, 99%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's amazing. And really, patient satisfaction is how patients evaluate the care they're getting. Right. That's their measure of quality. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing what you've been up to. And would you mind if we put contact information for you in the show notes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. If a nurse executive or leader or even a nurse wanted to reach out to you and inquire more, I'll put a plug in here right now too, as well, is that on August 11th, Capstone's going to be doing a 1-hour webinar just talking about a step-by-step process for introducing and bringing and keeping a nursing bundle alive for organizations that haven't done that, or maybe have tried and maybe aren't exactly where they want to be with that, or maybe they want to revisit it. We're going to do a webinar on that. And then we're actually going to do a deeper dive into actually doing a nursing bundle boot camp, which we haven't done in several years. We used to do them live in person, and we've done them virtually before, but we haven't done one in a long time. And we're going to go deeper over 2 days, about a total of 8 hours of the what, why, and how of not just the bundle practices that could be in your bundle, but the process for being successful and adopting it. And your organization has been, doing that work for a lot of years now. So we'll be talking about that process during those 2 events coming up. So yeah, I just want to put in a plug for that, as people might be really interested and inspired by what you've been doing there at Grant. I'm sure people will be inspired. Thank you, Theresa.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.
Are you curious about how Capstone Leadership Solutions can help your small healthcare organization to improve and grow with more speed and ease? If so, reach out to us at capstoneleadership.net. There's a contact us page, or you can email us at info@capstoneleadership.net. We're here to help.